The world that we live in is rapidly changing. What once have been referred to as local communities are now being referred to as global communities. And within that, people who belong to certain cultural, religious, or social groups are becoming increasingly diverse in their interpretations of how these are expressed in the world. In this context, we're faced with looking at some of the frameworks that organise our society. We must look into if they are still to be considered as relevant or beneficial to what is our new global community. One of these frameworks is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We're interested in how it interrelates with collective rights of those who associate strongly with communities of people with their own social orders and systems. Essentially, a question that must be asked is how does the Universal Declaration of Human Rights undermine these collective rights? We believe that it does. However, we understand that this is a necessary sacrifice in order to maintain the safety and autonomy of the individual within society. Let us explain. Human rights is an attempt to identify and protect key values of what it means to be a human individual within society. Individual human rights have brought forth significant positive change across recent history. However, not all changes can be considered positive. The Declaration of Human Rights has largely been formed in a Western cultural construct. As a result, what has appeared to be normal or self-evident has not always been the case. We can witness this Western bias throughout our recent colonial history as civilizing savages. However, these cultural groups have not always been raised with the Western construct. Often, they have a different way of viewing their humanity. The approach is often a collective one of identifying as a part of a group first. This Western bias still exists today, although far more subtly, within attempts for social cohesion and progression. With the introduction of the Universal Declaration of Indigenous Rights in 2007, the conversation was broadened to cater for more collectivist cultures. Although it can be argued that the individual human rights may come from a Western understanding, and this can at times undermine collective rights, we do not believe that this weakens the need for these rights. In fact, moving into the era of global communities, these individual rights come to protect collective groups all the more. Two main areas that we looked into for how human rights and collective rights interrelate are Indigenous groups and religious groups. Indigenous populations have found themselves at the receiving end of Western colonial mindset. While this has brought many positive changes to Indigenous populations, it's also resulted in the destruction of cultural practices, languages, and traditions. Valuing the individual has at times undermined the social cohesion of collectivist cultures, resulting in untold and systematic breakdown of their social structures. Indigenous communities are complex, unique, and they have each their own stories. However, these groups are also filled with individuals with differing experiences, connection to their culture, and understanding of the world. So, as many of these cultural groups are having to learn to exist alongside one another, there becomes a need for allowing space for these cultures to be autonomous and have the ability to do things differently. Individual human rights at times can directly undermine the right for collectivist communities to maintain their usual practices and traditions. However, this is usually in extreme cases. As a result, we believe that although they can undermine some collective rights, it's worth it for the protection that it offers collective groups, but also how it keeps all individuals safe. This is where the Declaration of Indigenous Rights allows the space for this and offers some clarity around the rights that collective groups have in the world as well without undermining the original human rights. However, the rights are not always implemented as they are intended to be, and as a result, both collective and individual human rights can be subject to misinterpretation and misuse. As Parmet points out, although the human right to health is established under international law, many states limit non-citizen participation in public insurance programs still. Consequently, in order to revalue different cultures and bring restoration to past injustices, we've seen the pendulum swing back from a focus on individual rights to have given greater weight to collective human rights at the expense of our individual human rights. In the Western understanding of personal and privatized religion, does not recognize the cultural significance of religion as cultural narrative, identity in order to have many collectivist cultures. As a result, we do not value the significance of religious cultural identity due to an oversimplified Western mindset of religion as just personal preference. However, religion is an integral part of many communities, not as an aspect of who they are, but a system that they exist within, and these systems can offer alternative ideas of how human rights are enacted. Religion is an important part for many people, an essential part of their humanity and spirituality. However, human rights and religious freedom standards are not always enforced properly, and because of this, it's causing serious damage and threatens the anticipation of justice and peace. While needing to recognise the influence of religion and cultural identity, the Declaration of Human Rights has provided a necessary tool to value individuals within contexts, particularly when these contexts are oppressive or dehumanising, such as the tension between the rights of religious groups in conflict with the rights of LGBTQ and many other issues. Though collective rights can be valued, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights can at times undermine these collective perspectives. However, this is a necessary sacrifice in order to maintain the safety and autonomy of the individuals within society. The Declaration of Indigenous Rights, however, offers a broader protection, taking into account these collectivist groups and allowing their voices to be heard. The Declaration states that in those states where ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities exist, persons belonging to such minorities shall have the right to community with other members of their group, to use their own language, to profess and practice their own religion, and to enjoy their own culture. So, how do we reconcile human rights, which largely centre on individualistic practices, with cultural values and norms of traditionally collectivist cultures? Lohman argues that this imperfection of the interplay between the individual and collective rights hurts our confidence in the absolute. However, when both the individual and collective are valued in their imperfect forms, both can flourish and grow. And we believe that though at times the individual human rights can undercut collective rights, this is for the safety and value of all people. As Lohman says, individuals exist to help their community function well. And we believe that this is what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights intends to do.